On August 9, 1986, under the blazing lights of Knebworth Park, Freddie Mercury walked onto the stage for what would unknowingly become his greatest triumph and final bow. The crowd of 120,000 roared like an ocean of fire, hungry for the voice that had defined a generation. Yet behind breezy confidence and electrifying energy, Freddie carried a secret burden. His voice was failing, his body trembling with fatigue, and his doctor had issued a stark warning. This performance could cost him everything. In this video, we unlock the strangest, most astonishing facts about Freddie Mercury's final concert. Facts so surreal they seem ripped from a fever dream, where triumph dances hand in hand with tragedy. Contrast the image of a rock god commanding the stage with the fragile man, who feared every note could spell disaster. One moment, Freddie soared through anthems like "We Will Rock You" and "Under Pressure," his 4-octave range slicing the air with surgical precision. The next, he battled a cracking voice, ghosts of bronchial strain haunting his every breath. As we peel back the layers of insider accounts, broken mic stands, and backstage meltdowns, you'll discover a kaleidoscope of stories that rewrite the legend of Queen's final live appearance. From forbidden backstage footage to a fan's untimely collapse, every revelation casts that epic night in an entirely new light. Just days before, whispers had circulated that Mercury, then only 39, was unwell. He'd grown gaunt, his iconic mustache drooping at the edges, and each high note became an act of defiance against a body battered by relentless touring and a mysterious illness. His doctor advised rest, but Mercury was determined. "No one will leave until I sing," he reportedly insisted. That steely resolve turned his concert into a crucible, where every chord felt like a lifeline thrown from a man determined to conquer time itself. Little did anyone know these final strains would echo into eternity, sealing a legacy that transcended mortality. Behind the scenes, tension simmered. John Deacon, the band's quiet bassist, who was known for composed professionalism, erupted in unprecedented fury. Just minutes before hitting the stage, he flung his bass guitar across the dressing room in a rare act of desperation, nearly striking Roger Taylor's drum tech. Deacon later admitted that the moment ignited a fear he could no longer contain, that this might truly be the last time he'd share the stage with his lifelong friend and frontman. Meanwhile, an eerie absence enveloped the corridors. After the final encore, Mercury vanished, leaving crew members searching empty hallways and echoing stairwells where his laughter once danced. In an ironic twist, tragedy struck not on stage but deep in the crowd, during the haunting melodies of "Who Wants to Live Forever?" A 23-year-old fan named Michael Jennings collapsed just 50 meters from the stage. Heart pounding with euphoric abandon, Jennings succumbed to a silent heart condition that even frantic paramedics could not reverse. His last breath became part of Queen's legend, a chilling footnote to a moment that many remember as pure rock ecstasy. The juxtaposition of life ending as music soared felt like an unspoken metaphor for Mercury himself, whose vibrant existence was under siege by unseen forces. Yet for Freddie, the show must always go on. Witness accounts describe moments when his voice wavered, crackling like a faltering candle, only for him to defiantly invite the crowd to sing along, turning vulnerability into collective strength. In one unforgettable instant during "Under Pressure," his mic stand broke, and instead of retreating, he seized the broken equipment like a scepter, crownless yet majestic. That impulsive discovery forged his iconic bottomless mic stand, a symbol of liberation that would appear in concerts to follow, immortalizing a spontaneous act of resilience. As the final chords of "Are the Champions" reverberated, the stadium hush turned into a single heartbeat that pulsed across fields and villages miles away, as if the earth itself recognized the end of an epoch. Mercury stood center stage, head tilted back, savoring every note, every scream, every flash of camera light. Then, with a bow so graceful it seemed choreographed by fate itself, he whispered, "Thank you, lovely people. Good night and sweet dreams." It was a farewell dressed in gratitude, a moment suspended between glory and goodbye. But this concert was far more than a list of songs played under the glow of pyrotechnics. It was a crucible of human spirit, vulnerability thrust into the spotlight, endurance tested by illness, and art forged in the heat of immense physical and emotional strain. As we venture deeper into the story, we'll reveal hidden backstage footage, dissect the unspoken tensions that threatened to dismantle Queen from within, and explore the poignant aftermath that saw Mercury retreat into seclusion, grappling with a fate that even his bravado could not outrun. Stay with us as we journey through the mirrors and smoke, unearthing the strangest truths behind Freddie Mercury's final concert. Each fact you're about to hear will challenge what you thought you knew and leave you questioning the line between legend and reality. Inside the sprawling grounds of Nebworth Park, as dusk melted into night, the stage loomed like a titan ready to roar. Enormous pyrotechnic towers blazed with fiery intensity, outlining a giant crown that hovered above four shimmering silhouettes. Brian May's guitar tone, warm and searing, filled the air as the first chords of One Vision thundered through 168 custom lights and 12 airplane landing lamps. Every riff cut through the cool English air like a knife, and a tidal wave of cheers crashed against the barricades. At this moment, Queen was more than a band, they were a phenomenon, a living specter channeling decades of passion, ambition, and unspoken fear. Backstage, the atmosphere was taut with tension. Moments before the curtain rose, Freddie Mercury sat hunched in a dimly lit trailer, clutching a hot water bottle against his throat. Earlier that afternoon, a terse phone call from his physician had arrived. Lower your voice or risk irreparable damage. Yet that same doctor's worried plea collided with Freddie's ironclad promise to his fans. He would not quit, not tonight. Crew members remember his fingers tapping the rim of a chipped mug, his gaze flickering like a trapped animal weighing escape versus obligation. In a rare display of vulnerability, he murmured to his assistant, "I can't let them down," before forcing a grin that masked pain. No one dared to challenge. Then came, "Tear your mother down," and with it, Freddie's unspoken gamble. Each verse demanded power he hadn't felt in months. As the familiar guitar riff kicked in, he launched into the chorus, voice trembling yet defiant, an auditory tightrope between brilliance and breakdown. Midway through, a jagged crack forced him to pause, eyes flicking toward Roger Taylor's drum kit, as if searching for psychic support. The audience sensed the hitch. A hush rippled through the field, followed by a collective surge of encouragement. It was a moment of shared consciousness, a band breaching its own limits, and fans willing the voice they loved to survive, to conquer every shadow creeping at the edge of each note. As the tempo shifted to the somber opening notes of Who Wants to Live Forever, the stage lights dimmed until Mercury stood alone in a glowing halo. His silhouette, fragile yet regal, held the audience in a trance. Behind him, an 80-piece orchestra arranged by Michael Kamen swelled into place, weaving strings and brass into a tapestry of mortality and longing. Beneath that orchestral grandeur lurked an eerie quiet. Each spectator felt compelled to listen, as if even a breath would mar the sacred moment. But tragedy stalked this hymn. Michael Jennings, overcome by euphoria and an undiagnosed heart defect, collapsed amid the front rows. While Queen sang of immortal love, Life slipped away in silence. Moments later, as medics worked desperately among the screaming sea of fans, the band remained unaware. Onstage, the glow of multicolored spotlights painted Mercury's white tank top in surreal hues as he soared through. Crazy little thing called love. His trademark swagger returned, each step across the catwalk a defiant statement. Illness could gnaw at flesh, but it could not break his spirit. The crowd erupted when a perfect falsetto sliced through the final verse, and for a fleeting minute, he was invincible. This juxtaposition, raw vulnerability patched over by showmanship, became the heartbeat of the night. Queen had mastered the art of turning personal struggle into collective triumph. But backstage, the storm was brewing. John Deacon, normally the anchor of quiet stability, paced like a caged animal. Moments before the set began, he threw his Fender Precision across the room, its polished neck splintering on impact. Roger Taylor's drum tech ducked just in time. Deacon's eyes blazed not with anger toward a bandmate, but with the dread of finality. He confessed later, "I realized this might be the last time I'd ever play with him." When he took the stage, that pent-up tension translated into a ferocity in his bass lines. Notes torn from anxiety and loyalty. Each plucked string a heartbeat, echoing the fragility hanging over the night. As word of Jennings' collapse eventually reached Freddie, his trademark bravado faltered for a heartbeat. He paused between songs, gazing toward the sea of faces, searching for familiar eyes amid the sea of concern. Crew members say he closed his eyes, then exhaled slowly, as if steeling himself, before charging ahead with Under Pressure. In that duet with Brian May's soaring guitar, Mercury transformed grief into a rallying cry. The crowd responded with a chorus that drowned out any sense of despair. A testament to the bond between artist and audience. By the time the final note reverberated, he had turned tragedy into catharsis, binding everyone together. When Freddie launched into Bohemian Rhapsody, the night reached its apotheosis. Every listener held their breath as the opening piano chords tumbled through the darkness, conjuring an opera within a field. Mercury's voice, though wavering, soared higher than any mortal vocal in that park, gliding through area like passages without flaw. Behind him, harmonized overdubs laid down months earlier in London, fused with live riffs to create a cathedral of sound. For those 3 haunting minutes, time stood still, every crack in his tone forgiven by the sheer emotional gravity of the moment. As Brian May's searing guitar solo crashed into the headbanging finale, the crowd exploded with lights and shouts, cementing the song as both anthem and elegy. Mid-song, the broken mic stand he'd first discovered in a small theater years before reappeared like a talisman. That severed bottom half had become the staff he wielded like a scepter, symbolizing unbroken will. That night, he leaned on it when his legs trembled, arms raised toward the heavens, as though drawing energy from its fractured form. Every tilt, every turn spoke of a performer who refused to let weakening bones dictate the show. The staff may have been fragile, but in Freddie's grip, it became an unyielding rod of power. Following the theatrical trance of Rhapsody came Radio Gaga, a track whose driving rhythm had once divided critics. On stage, it felt like a revolution reborn. Mercury leapt across the catwalk, bidding the crowd to clap in unison. Those 120,000 hands became a living wave, glowing brighter than any pyrotechnic blast. His voice found fresh reserves of strength in that communal heartbeat, and when the echo of synchronized claps roared back at him, he basked in a rare moment of symbiosis, every soul linked under the spell of rock. Yet backstage, the undercurrent of chaos never subsided. A seething Roger Taylor unleashed updates to the tech crew. Every stick strike on his snare kit punctuating his worry. He watched Mercury closely, fearing his friend might collapse mid-chorus. Meanwhile, Queen's manager paced outside the wing, phone to ear, negotiating emergency exit routes and hospital contingencies. It was a circus of hidden drama, a parallel performance that contrasted the polished spectacle unfolding under the floodlights. Just after, fat-bottomed girls sparked headbangs and laughter. Disaster nearly struck the visual rig. A cable snaked loose, darkening half the giant video screen. In a blink, 3 of the 4 band members vanished in flickering green light. The tech team scrambled for replacement fuses, but the glitch endured for a full minute. Onstage, Mercury quipped, "Well, at least now you know who's not here," prompting a relieved roar from the audience. That lightning fast wit turned a potential disaster into another indelible moment. Proof that spontaneity was Queen's secret weapon. At 8:50 p.m., the final countdown began. "We Are the Champions" rolled out, and Mercury's cracking voice sent shivers down spines. The lyric, "We'll keep on fighting," rang both triumphant and eerie, as if the song spoke directly to his fragile condition. Each sustained note pulled at the heartstrings of everyone present, aware it could be the last time they heard him belt those words. When he finally released that final, quivering high note, the park exhaled in a roar that seemed to lift the speakers and scaffolding into the sky. Moments later, "God Save the Queen" washed over the crowd in red, white, and blue beams, an instrumental goodbye that felt more poignant than any lyric. As the final chords faded, Mercury lowered his arms, his silhouette framed by glittering pyrotechnics overhead. Then he vanished through the curtain, leaving only echoes behind. Crew members sprinted through deserted corridors calling his name, but he had already slipped away into the night, as mysterious in departure as he had been commanding in entrance. In the hushed aftermath, medics confirmed the death of 23-year-old fan Michael Jennings. Word reached Freddie in his dressing trailer, and the bravado drained from his eyes. He sat in stunned silence as the news settled in. A performance meant to immortalize life's greatest highs now carried tragic footnotes. That stark irony became woven into the legend of his final bow, imbuing the concert with a mythic duality of triumph and mourning. As dawn approached and the crew dismantled towers, Queen's members lingered in muddy fields, swallowing grief, exhaustion, and relief. They knew they had conjured something extraordinary, a concert for the ages, but at a cost no thunderous ovation could measure. Reporters swarmed every available soundbite, crafting narratives of heroism and heartbreak. Yet behind the headlines lay a deeper truth. On that night, Freddie Mercury confronted his own vulnerabilities and emerged not unscathed, but unbowed. In the days that followed Nebworth, Queen's world seemed suspended between relief and disbelief. The muddy grass where 120,000 fans had roared lay bruised and torn, much like the band members themselves. Exhausted, exhilarated, and haunted, Freddie Mercury retreated to the solitude of his Kensington home, where the applause still echoed in his mind even as his body begged for rest. His silver bracelet, left behind on stage and later returned by a conscientious roadie, lay on his dresser. A cold reminder that every triumph carried its price. He spent hours gazing out the window, watching London breathe its evening sigh, replaying each note in his head, and wrestling with the knowledge that his voice, once an instrument of invincibility, now signaled a creeping vulnerability. Brian May and Roger Taylor flew back to their studios in Surrey and Devon, respectively, clutching battered schematics for stage rigs and scribbled notes on pyrotechnic timings. John Deacon, deeply shaken by the collapse of their young fan, vanished to his country home, where he walked through misty fields seeking solace in complete silence. The band's manager, ever the pragmatist, scrambled to manage press inquiries, weaving narratives of rock glory, while deftly glossing over the tragedy and backstage tensions. Yet, no polished press release could fully capture the gravity of what had just transpired, a final live act so potent in its triumph that it masked an undercurrent of impending farewell. In private, Queen convened in a low, lit rehearsal space to debrief. Mercury, haggard but still wearing that unmistakable intensity in his eyes, listened as May recounted technical snags and Taylor aired his fears about Freddie's health. Instead of capitulating to concern, Freddie leaned forward and spoke with the conviction of a general rallying his troops. "What gave them everything? Let's make sure the rest of the world remembers that." With those words, the band resolved to convert their live magic into a lasting testament. Plans formed for a live album or concert film, capturing the fire of that night and preserving Freddie at his rawest peak. Meanwhile, whispers of Mercury's illness began to swirl beyond the inner circle. Tabloid rumors, fueled by his gaunt appearance and whispered references to respiratory issues, spread like wildfire. Freddie, always the consummate performer, refused to address the speculation, choosing instead to channel energy into studio sessions for Queen's next project. He believed that silence would protect him and his loved ones. But in the harsh glare of public curiosity, absence only fueled more questions. His reclusive guests, Mary Austin and longtime assistant Peter Freestone, became his world, offering quiet companionship as he navigated the uncertain terrain between vitality and decline. As Queen prepared for the release of a live concert film, editors sifted through hours of footage. Sweat, slicked stage dives, rigs cracking under strain, and Freddie's voice wobbling on opening lines before stealing itself. One sequence stood out, his sudden gesture to the orchestra to soften their chords during "Who Wants to Live Forever?" A raw act of empathy rarely seen from a rock frontman. That clip became the emotional anchor of the film's trailer, enticing fans with a promise of unguarded intimacy. Promotional campaigns emphasized the aura of finality. Witness Freddie Mercury's last concert in living color, stoking both nostalgia and FOMO in legions of admirers, craving one more glimpse of their hero. When the film premiered at select theaters, tickets sold out within hours. Audiences sat in stunned silence as Freddie's silhouette emerged from the smoke, each song punctuated by titters of recognition and collective gasps at his courageous vulnerability. For many, it felt like a cinematic séance, bringing Mercury back from the shadows, even if only for a fleeting hour. Critics lauded the production for not sugarcoating the flaws in his performances. Instead, they celebrated the cracks and hesitations as marks of heroism, evidence of an artist battling his limits to gift the world a final masterpiece. But behind the veil of fanfare, the band's true struggle loomed: how to honor that last live performance without endlessly chasing a ghost. Queen recognized that no sequel or retrospective could capture the raw alchemy of August 9th, so they shifted focus to legacy rather than replay. Brian May curated a photographic exhibition showcasing behind the scenes moments: Mercury warming up in the trailer, Deacon's anger, flecked pacing, Taylor tucking snares beneath floodlights, and the sea of upturned faces under the crown rig. Each image bore silent witness to the fragile power that converged on that stage, offering fans a tactile connection to a night that had slipped into legend. As word spread of Mercury's increasingly rare public appearances, fans clung to every scrap of news. From rumors of new solo tracks to sightings of him sketching album art, his promise to Mary Austin that he would continue making music stayed unbroken, even as his health faltered. In 1987, he released The Great Pretender, cover evoking the bittersweet interplay between public persona and private anguish. The video's theatrical flair, with Mercury draped in red velvet and flickering candlelight, felt like a poignant nod to the performative courage he'd summoned at Nebworth. An echo of the man who, despite crumbling foundations, refused to let the show end. Behind closed doors, Queen's future hinged on delicate negotiations. Taylor and May grappled with unfinished album tracks that now carried a mournful weight. Deacon, wrestling with grief and fear, considered stepping away entirely, but Mercury's voice, though hushed in private, resounded in their minds like a clarion call to persevere. They honored his legacy by completing the record they'd begun, weaving in guest vocalists and orchestral overdubs only where Freddie's parts could not be salvaged. The resulting album, released posthumously, felt less like a commercial project and more like an act of devotion, a love letter from surviving bandmates to a fallen comrade, punctuated by the echoes of their final triumph together. Queen's final live concert became the linchpin of a mythology that would grow exponentially after Freddie's death. Fans constructed pilgrimages to Nebworth Park, tracing the ground where he soared. Tribute concerts lit up stadiums worldwide, each performance carrying a fragment of that last night's defiant spirit. Decades later, the 25th anniversary of Nebworth sparked new commemorations, limited edition vinyl pressings of the live recordings, immersive VR experiences recreating the crown, rig, and roar of the crowd, and scholarly articles dissecting every microsecond of Freddie's delivery to glean insights into his indomitable will. The sun dipped low over London as Freddie Mercury returned to the studio for what would become his final masterpiece. The city lights blinked in the distance, a reminder of stages left behind and crowds roaring into the night. Within the quiet of the recording booth, Freddie faced a new arena: the microphone, the mixing console, the delicate art of capturing magic one crystal, clear note at a time. By this point, his respiratory struggles were no secret to the band. Each inhalation during tracking sessions felt like a battle, each sustained chorus note a victory over a body fraying at the edges. Brian May arrived one afternoon carrying handwritten lyrics to "The Show Must Go On." In his eyes, sorrow and admiration intertwined. The song, conceived amidst late-night conversations about fate and fear, carried a chorus that read like a manifesto. "My soul is painted like the wings of butterflies. Fairy tales of yesterday will grow but never die." As Freddie stood before the mic, the first verse quivered out like a confession, his voice breaking, then rallying, then soaring beyond its own limits. Engineers watched in awe as he nailed the final refrain in a single take, using a measured shot of vodka to steel his nerves. That one unbreakable performance would stand as both defiance and epitaph.